This is Brainy Podcasts with Soraya Shaw and Tracy Filler, inspiring creativity and innovation through evidenced neuroscience.
I just wanted to ask you, Leanne, what are the implications of this for the future of business and work? And if we're just to come back to creativity and innovation and
Yes.
giving people the confidence to do that, because we've heard so many people go, oh my goodness, I'm not creative. I don't do that. You know, that you need to be a painter or a whatever it might be.
Yes.
How can this really help, do you think? What can it add?
Well, the world is the answer. You know, that which we
I love
are.
it.
We
Yeah.
are not to overstate my discipline.
Yeah.
but we as human beings have unknowable depths. You know, the extent of our creative capacity, of our problem-solving abilities, of our abilities to reach new understandings, to theorize, you know, and to think differently. But moreover, our capacity to think of and support the other in a state of cognitive empathy is infinite, actually. And so much of the neuroscience, I think, that continues to emerge points to really the very purpose of us in so many ways. How the brain is designed to be and to flourish. It shows us that a state of social safety and belonging and connectedness is twinned with a state of compassion and empathy. Richard Davidson and Sharon Begley and so many others have conducted extraordinary research into Tibetan monks, fMRI studies of Tibetan monks in the practice of prayer and meditation, compassion-focused meditation, to uncover the unlock that occurs in those states of creativity and of our own well-being systems. In that state, all other things will flow and follow. So that, again, points us to the fact that it is of essential importance to continue to tune and work on the social brain and its power to care for others and to treat others meaningfully and connectedly with care, with respect, with kindness. If we want the best out of our brains in the business, that is an essential requirement of our practice. And yet, look at the state of organizations today.
Yeah, totally.
They do not mirror that state. There's a long way to go, which is why I say I think the biggest oppositional force is the fear pattern of most of our leaders today. The states of threat their brains are operating in, I mean, that they are making decisions out of self-protection, the need to protect their reputation, how they're being perceived, their job, their portfolio area. And those fear drivers, of course, have their brains in the very opposite state and therefore likely to replicate the very behaviours that hurt the social brain, that injure it and that retard its ability to participate and perform. So getting our leaders into a safe social brain state is where the work does begin, and it's very underdone work. Then we can work on the organisations. However, I will say, and it's part of the answer to what it means, working on the entire system of social brains in an organisation, changing those settings for all, does also bring the leaders along and help with leadership change as well as culture change. You know, the one of the programs I've developed, Class Act Conduct. I designed specifically to roll out across an entire organisation, regardless of the number of people in it. to give them the, interactively in an online way, the tools to develop that, understand and build that shared language and that shared awareness. It's very practical and very specific. And that was a real gap that I was responding to in the literature and practice. You'll notice that, for example, definitions of workplace bullying are so broad: harassment, intimidation, threats, abuse. They're accurate high-level descriptors, but they're no basis for education and change. Descriptions such as sarcasm, derision, cold, curt, abrupt answers to questions, when we're seeing these things in a pattern, gestures of exclusion in social interaction, dominating conversations, interrupting another consistently, someone who's consistently looking at their phone when another person goes to speak, but they don't do that when Mary goes to speak. We've got a world of unsafe and safe behaviors that we can understand because we have amassed, I mean, I'm talking about my work and research and my team's work over the years, hundreds of thousands of pieces of data on people's experiences of communication behavior at work that tell us what these patterns and behaviors look like when they are repeated over and again and the impact they have on them. So we've got a wealth of qualitative and quantitative data on communication interactions and their impact on the social brain. So, giving staff access to that specific and practical content as a means of helping them reshape, giving them the tools to reshape their experience of their communication culture at work is the answer. Yeah. It's that shared mindset and that shared skill and ownership that creates change. And then, of course, when leaders are participating in that, they're getting the benefits of those safe behavior and brain shifts as well. And it's work that needs to occur across a culture. It starts with leaders and then needs to engage absolutely everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's where the rituals to change that culture come in. There's rituals that people use. But also I was mindful, I was writing something yesterday about actually going back to shared values. What are the values of the organization? What's their purpose? Why are they there? Right. Why does everybody walk in the door? Why do they, what do they want to get out of their life? And again, having these conversations, as you're saying, people don't have them. It's kind of like we know why we're here. Yes, but why are you here? Oh, well, I'm not, and I think to bring it back to that becomes so important, that humanity piece again.
That's one thing that Paul said to me in recent years, that, people have lost the attachment to the purpose of their organization.
Yeah.
And of course, 9 times out of 10 are equally unattached from the values the organization espouses internally. But that's because the organization didn't ever do the work to put the boots on those values and support people to practice them and walk and talk them. And that's the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. They too often, values for an organization have been created through marketing strategy as opposed to substance of purpose of the organization and drivers and indicators of how you will behave in that building.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good. And
now,
to think there's still so much to talk about.
Oh my God, there is so much to talk about. I've got one question. I've got 2 questions. Well, Tracy's got one. I've got another one. So as we want to give people some kind of practical tips that they can take away and a little bit of gossip.
Absolutely.
We love a little bit of gossip. We need that. We need that bit of fun. So I was going to ask you, given what we've been talking about, is how do you create joy and laughter in your organization?
Oh, that's fantastic. And to be honest, I think I've done quite a poor show of it recently. There's nothing like starting up a new There's nothing like starting up a new company and a new national network to run you out of the extra juice which you didn't have in the first place. And I actually said to my team we have my team is spread across the country, and I have a couple of team members offshore as well. And but we are very used to working and connecting and operating virtually. We always have done. But I did say to them last week that, you know, I feel like that I have been letting them down lately, that I've been a very poor version of myself, you know, just nose to the grindstone in sort of in furious growth mode, in the interests of us all, of course, but I haven't been present the same way. And I think that, you know, relationship is the key term to unlock that joy and that fun that comes through our connection with each other. But of course, a part of that is also the honesty. You know, it's so important that we can all come, including the leader, and say, I don't think I'm doing so great at what I'm supposed to be doing at the moment, you know, and stepping into that honesty and into owning your mistakes and shortcomings rather than pedaling furiously away from them. That in itself unlocks the others to do the same. So when we do get together, we, you know, it's really special. It's really special when we get together. It's very rare. We've only had one time in the last several years where we all, that includes the members of the team offshore and across the country, all came together in one place and one time for an evening, which was absolutely incredible, to farewell my previous director of programs. And it was just, yeah, it was amazing. During COVID, we do these little sort of like games nights on a Friday night, so just which was so fun, which was so good. So yeah, it's we have to do weird things, but like I said, yeah, I'm not your poster child right now, as I said to the team.
But even you saying that shows such courage as a leader, you know, and you're not even asking for feedback, you're giving it yourself because you're being very transparent. So as talking about, you know, the social brain, that's a great trait to have as a leader. So, and knowing you, I bet you're full of warmth, so I wouldn't even worry about it.
I think they know they can come to me, and that's what you hope to foster always. That sense that they can always come for the conversation. I just had a member of the team, you know, text me just before I jumped on to say, hey, can we have a chat? You know, struggling with something, just need to run it past you. That's so precious.
Listening to that just made me think of, we often talk about one of the qualities of a leader is that they're approachable, but actually I think it's deeper than that. What you've described is vulnerability and being comfortable with showcasing your own vulnerability so others can do the same. And there's a lovely quote that I found by Brené Brown, and it says, vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
On point, Brené Brown.
Yeah, I thought that was beautiful because, but what I've not done is put that I haven't connected that with that approachable. What makes you approachable? They're just too surface, some of the things that we've given as traditional steers for the qualities of a good leader. And I think we're putting some depth to it now. So I would shift approachability with vulnerability.
I think that's very wise. Yeah, very astute.
Yeah.
So I've forgotten my question. Sorry. Genuinely.
Shall I prompt you, Tracy? Shall I prompt
yes, please. You ask the question.
Because we're talking about the social brain and how important leadership is, but I think we've also all agreeing that actually it's upwards, downwards. It's got to work totally as a culture, as a
entire
values,
system
everything.
Of humans.
Yeah, exactly. But one question to ask you is, as a senior leader, what's your leadership secret?
Great question.
It was a great question. I wish I'd remembered it.
I wish I had a pithy, cool answer for that. It's relationship is the answer. I don't think I am a good leader. I think I have sincere relationships with
Yeah.
everyone in my team, a depth relationship with everyone in my team.
I think that's lovely.
And
Sincere relationship. That's brilliant.
out of which
Yeah.
everything else can follow. I mean, I am very cause driven, very passion driven. I do believe the team is all very connected to the purpose that
Yeah.
we have and to the work we do. And, you know, working in the messy business of human beings, it's a challenging field organizationally. You have to weather a lot of storms. There's a lot of hurt we see. And there's a lot of, you know, resistance we get from leaders, and we have sadness and disappointment and frustration when we see leaders who do not get it and are not prioritizing the things that will most unlock their organization and safeguard their people and ensure their people flourish.
Mm.
Sadly, there's more resistance to that courage, what apparently requires courageous leadership. And so, you know, we battle it out at times. There are a lot of leaders who want to be seen to be doing their job and they're not doing it. And in that threat space, the safe choices are so irresistible to a leader. So, you know, these are the challenges that we have. And so that I think ultimately the passion and purpose and the impact we see our work has on people and leaders and their organizations does also fuel us. But I think ultimately it's what the brain needs most to operate well in any setting is it needs a relationship, a sincere relationship. And out of that, we can do everything.
One last question, because we've talked a lot about the responsibility on the leader's shoulders, but I know we started the conversation with health and safety, and the general rules around health and safety and Work Act, certainly in the UK, is that we are all responsible for our own safety. And I'm just thinking of the lens of the individual in the organisation at any level. What's their first step to start supporting, encouraging, and working against that leadership resistance to create and cultivate the right environment for them to flourish?
Nice
the
question.
First step is to not underestimate their power to actually do that. Of course, we all wish for the world where the leaders of an organization purposefully shape that culture of safety and support and belonging. But we don't always find that in our world, as we know, and the power of the individual should not be underestimated to shape their own team environment and create the workplace that they step into every single day. Actually, let's not underestimate the powerful system that the social brain is. We've touched on that. Just think about when we walk into a physical space. Think about those ion-based particles engage in this magnetic exchange with each other and each other's brains as we step in, telling the story. You know, just the moments we take to mindfully choose how we enter our workspace every day. As you've said, Sarai, the stories we tell ourselves have such a profound impact on us. You know, we have the power to choose those stories and to, you know, do whatever it is ours to do, to attach to our values, to pray, to meditate, to have some mindful time, to choose what will serve the other and the self, you know, as we walk in. That affects the square set of our shoulders, you know, the way we hold our head, the way our facial muscles will move, the way our bodies will move, and the information we will send that helps others feel safe and to feel belonging and acceptance from you, therefore returning the same to you. We can't underestimate the power of our social brains to respond to those cues. They're almost looking for them. You know, where my husband and I are training our 2-year-old dog and our puppy at the moment, and it's been really interesting.
We're all dog lovers.
Good luck with that.
Trainer, love my dogs. The trainer has been doing some amazing work with us, just started. But her approach is to focus on the energetic information we send out our dogs through our body language, through the way we hold the lead, the information they're getting that's, telling them to rest and trust and be confident, and taking them out of that state where they feel they need to be full of angst and look at all the potential threats, as our 2-year-old is trying to do to safeguard the new puppy, no less but more so our social brain. So that's where it starts. But equally, in terms of practical skill, that language, that manner before matter language, that I spoke of earlier, I think it's fair to say has been a gift to hundreds of thousands of workers in this country, and others at this point. We can go back years later after rolling out Class Act, and we will find staff are still talking about manner before matter, or maybe they've reshaped it to manner over matter, or they're talking about manner, and they're talking about the communication charter that they created through the program interaction, and that mindful use of manner and the courage and ability to have a conversation about it is supremely powerful in our lives. When we can go up to someone and say to them, look, forgive me, I may have this wrong, but I've been concerned about it, and I thought I can keep it to myself or I can talk to you about it. So I've decided to talk to you about it. I notice when I walk into the meeting room and I say hello, you're often a bit abrupt. And I sense that, and I've picked it up a few times now, and I just want to check, are we okay? Is there something I've done? Of course, the answer you get is the answer to is there something you've done, because there's nothing you have done that should earn discourtesy in an intended, targeted, and repeated way. However, as a framework to courteously ask a question and describe that manner in a neutral, respectful way, but put it on the table. This is the manner you've observed. Are we okay? To have that conversation, you have that once, you won't have it again. It's very unlikely you have to have it again, because you've called it out, you've declared it, it's been spoken about. It's very difficult for that person to come back and repeat that behavior again the next day. And if they're really entrenched in their patterns of behavior, if it's at a psychological, if that behavior is a function of their own psychological survival, you may have to have that conversation again. But you will see two things happen. You will see the frequency dissipate and the level of intentionality dissipate. And actually, you'll also find something in yourself, that it's the effect of that behavior has become neutralized because you talked about it. You took back healthy control of that interaction, of that communication pattern. You declared it. You told them, you signaled to them in a very polite way that you've noticed it, and it's not okay. That the transformational power of talking about manner, I cannot overestimate.
Yeah. I did, it brings to mind for me, I did a keynote on International Women's Day, and one of the panel was a very senior surgeon in the NHS. And it was quite interesting because this is what we were talking about. And what she was saying is exactly what you said. Funny enough, and to all HR people listening, I apologize. She said, don't take it to HR because it just gets escalated. Go and talk to the person, sit them down, exactly what you're saying, and the outcome will be completely different. And I just thought that was fabulous. That was, let's just talk. Let's put the elephant on the table, as I like to say, as opposed to in the room. Let's just talk about it.
Absolutely.
Lightly. Yeah.
Correct. Talk about how we talk to each other. And we don't have that language in our organizations. We can bring it. And, that's such an unlocking power for people in their lives. I mean, you think there's every single one of us, and the research bears it out, at some point in our lives, whether at work, at home, in a relationship with a brother, sister, parent, member of the sporting club we're in, we will experience bullying. We will experience bullying.
Yeah.
And it is so eroding for someone's confidence, self-efficacy, self-belief. We make it about ourselves when actually it's about the other person and their patterns, their need. Bullying always comes from a space of inferiority and felt inadequacy. And the motivator is to, whether it's conscious or non-conscious, is to project that state of inferiority and vulnerability onto the other as a means of psychological self-protection. And there's you probably need me to stop talking soon, but there's some really interesting, there are really interesting studies that point to patterns of psychopathy and how the amygdala processes and differently distributes threat information into the posterior parietal part of the brain, into the periaqueductal gray, which is a non-conscious region of the brain, but is associated with reproducing extinguished fear memories. That really spotlights that truth that actually a person stuck in patterns of destructive, harmful behavior are so often likely to be stuck in managing their own unconscious fear.
Yeah, I was reading a book called The Bad Brain, which was quite interesting, which was talking about exactly that. I just wanted to talk to you. Tracy and I recently were having a conversation with a senior guy in a consultancy firm, and we were having this conversation about, leaders have so much to do that actually, how do they prioritize the right things? And you made me think of the conversation Tracy and I had when you were talking about, if leaders could just think about the social brain and how they can create that security and that safety in their organizations. But when we think about our leaders today, there is so much going on for them. I mean, they've got stakeholder. I mean, it's just, how do you prioritize it? How do you, because people's stuff still feels soft.
Yeah. The job's getting bigger. The job of leadership is getting bigger. It's a vexing and demanding job. And I think we can't underestimate the pressure of upwards bullying as well. Sarah Branch, a terrific researcher in one of our Australian universities here, Griffith University, has done some really good research into upwards bullying and its prevalence, which is another pressure on leaders today and their sense of vulnerability, which indeed further incentivizes them to keep their doors shut and the walls up. I think it is a case of slowing down to speed up. It is a case for a leader of starting a day in a slow and quiet space, I do believe.
Yeah.
Starting the day doing what has meaning for you, reading something that has meaning for you, a time of reflection to enter your day and enter the space where all of your people are in a frame of mind which is healthy, is conscious, is aware of the information you're sending and sensitive, is more sensitized to the cues of others. Don't underestimate the power of your social brain to do that. And that's true whether you might be, on the spectrum, you might have a neuroatypical brain. A neuroatypical brain doesn't mean that you have no function in your prefrontal cortex where so many of these capabilities, sophisticated abilities, live. It doesn't knock out your social radar. It may challenge it, but it is there to build. Don't lose heart. It is possible for all of us to grow that social antenna. That starting that day, looking after self and entering the day in that state is a great way, I think a necessary ingredient. And that does take slowing down out of that speed rush. And it's very challenging to do when you just want to launch into all the stuff you've got to do. But it does keep giving you gifts back during the day. And then, having the conversation, starting that conversation with the colleagues and the peers you have as a leader that you actually trust the most and feel the safest with. Start practicing the conversation about talking how we talk to each other, have the social brain conversation with them, work up your sea legs, your social brain conversation sea legs, and then radiate it out. Get them on board, keep building that conversation culture. And then, and then see what critical mass you can build. It's the one thing I truly believe when it comes to psychosocial safety portfolio leadership, and that question I referred to earlier that's often been asked in organizations, is it the HR lead? Is it the safety lead who's responsible for this portfolio? My answer is it's the CEOs. And I think every single organization needs the Triforce leadership team of the CEO and the people and culture lead and the safety lead working together. But the CEO drives the vision, sets the direction. It's that important.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd add to that, because it just made me think about some early learning when in my first management role, is about nipping certain behaviors in the bud as well.
Yes.
So
good.
When these conversations are happening, let them happen earlier, not later. So
yes.
I remember one of my first failings as a manager was sort of two people having a tension and just not getting on. They just were very different people, but part of the same team, which is a very common problem. And you want them to bring the differences because that's the strength in your team. And I thought, they're adults, they'll sort it out. No, they won't. Not without your intervention and bringing a light on it to resolve it and make it, as you say, take the strength from it away by having the conversation and allowing them to recognize the strengths and the differences that they both bring and their contribution.
You're so right. Well said, Tracy. And there's a real challenge with that. I often describe that social brain as our, and that limbic system in particular that I spoke of earlier, processing the signals coming to us, identifying sources of social threat, interpreting the significance and the intention of those communication signals. And that's all happening in the non-conscious part of our brain. So that I often call the limbic brain our best friend and our worst enemy, because it's designed to keep us safe. It's the older part of the brain. And it's doing that by quickly identifying the source of threat, but quickly returning us to a state of safety. It wants to return us to safety in the shortest possible instance of time. It wants us safe quickly. And the brain takes the shortest and most efficient path to achieving its end. And so that path tends to be a compliant response or an avoidant response, because that's quick, that's efficient, it's a short-term solution for survival. Unfortunately, it's in a complete counter to the long-term strategic decision and step we need to take to break the pattern. So that's why we will go often quite a length of time before we ever make conscious that there's a problem that we have with this person, where our limbic brain is adapting to that situation and managing it for us and getting us to survive, supporting us to survive through it before we ever realize it exists. So when we finally make that tension conscious, unfortunately, the challenge is that those pathways, those neuronal pathways, are very well established and hard to change. Therein lies the challenge of neuroplasticity and making that change. So we've then got to support the conscious part of our brain to choose a different response. The first step in that is acknowledging that it's going to be scary. Every part of our limbic brain is going to be screaming at us. Don't go there. Don't have the conversation. Don't talk about it. You know what we do here? Hop on the horse. We avoid. We comply. Smile nicely and nod and survive the moment. Our limbic brain is screaming at us not to divert from that path. And that's okay. What we need to know at that point is that is okay. Be afraid. That's all right. It won't kill us. We're going to have that sympathetic nervous system response. It's going to be scary. We're probably going to stammer over our words. We probably won't have the command in our voice because our throat's going to be all tight. But that's okay, because we've prepared ourselves, we've resourced ourselves, we've skilled ourselves with a language to have the conversation. We're going to bring it forward. So pass through that barrier of fear. Therein lies the other side of fear, Tracy, as your son said. And that will come. That is there. That horizon is there on the other side of those hard conversations. But understanding what's going on in our brain is so helpful, because that helps, it resources us and equips us to, be ready for the challenge, to step in, to that fear, and to look that person, in the eye and speak clumsily or elegantly or anywhere in between to them and say, hey, I don't know what you're experiencing, but this is what I'm experiencing. I don't want this for either of us. We need to work well together. I'm sure it's frustrating for you at times. Let's discuss it. I'll let you know what I'm experiencing. I'll let you know where I think I might have been causing you some frustration and what's rubbing. I'll describe my manner, my patterns. Let me know. And what the other person does with that is entirely up to them. At that point, we've given them and the situation our absolute best, and the choice from there is theirs. But even if they don't respond in kind in that moment, it does not mean you haven't conquered the battle, because you still have. They might react in an obfuscating way. They might block, they might deny, they might dismiss, but they have still heard you. You have still called it out. The pattern is still broken.
So Leanne, what you're making me mindful of and thinking, and I think, Tracy, there's a pattern for us here, or a conversation, because we know that most people don't think that they're creative, so they don't open up, they don't talk, because they're terrified of being shot down. And I can't remember the stat, you might remember it, Tracy, about 80% of children at school love art and drawing and being creative, but by the time they're adults,
something like 11%
or something
like 11%.
Yeah, it's completely being kind of pushed out of them.
That hurts, doesn't it?
And so people don't even innovate, and if we're talking about the future of us as a species, really, humans, having those kind of conversations to say it's okay to just say what's on your mind and have an idea, and you're not going to be stupid, and it's really respected. And that, because we're talking about that non-conscious brain has already made those decisions that they can't do it. It's about getting people to open back up again and trust themselves, trust those around them, the whole social brain thing that you're talking. So it just brought to mind a whole conversation that can happen around that.
The reason for that statistic, will likely be that as we grow into adulthood, with every passing year through childhood and into adulthood, our brain spends so much time operating in a threat response, managing the threats around us, and they are so often from the other people. That's where the greatest threat to the social brain is. And so it's depleting that very thing we love, and that feeds and nourishes us and supports us to flourish, that creativity. Yeah. And, it really points to the significance, doesn't it, of having our safe people around us, having our friends, having colleagues that we just love as companions in our work and endeavors, and that we enjoy spending time with, and that we laugh with, and have those light, free to be ourselves times with. They are our food for creativity. And, often when we have one person in our lives that is the bully in our midst, or the person who keeps our brain in that threat response, however we want to describe it, we spend so much of our brain's energy focused on that person and surviving and managing them and the depleting effect they're having on us, when actually we have an ocean of people around us who are no doubt positively contributing to our lives and stimulating our creativity, enhancing our sense of acceptance and belonging to the communities we're in. And we really need to help our brain flip that number and recognize that that person may have their own challenge and we are resourced to deal with it and minimize its effect on us. But meanwhile, we have all of these other people around us that we're not giving our time and energy to and allowing to feed us unless we really consciously choose to prize them. And I, you know, that piece that's creative in all of us in that differentiated way, as you've said, you know, is always there to grow with that, you know, on that fertile soil of relationship.
Oh, how beautiful. I feel like that's brought the whole discussion full circle and to a beautiful natural close. Oh, Leanne, you can tell you work with words as well as the mind.
I started out as a writer and editor back 1,000 years ago in the years that I predate.
The years you predate. Wonderful. I love it.
You know,
I love it.
But you guys are a perfect example of what we're talking about, aren't you? It's
In what way?
your energy to me and our energy to each other. That sense of common pursuit, of creativity and what it is to be human and how we flourish. Our genuine and sincere intention and interest in that subject. Our sincere intention, moreover, towards each other. We, you know, the warmth, the camaraderie, they produce that, you know, that setting, that social setting produces powerful conversations. And that's what we need. They're the conversations we need springing like daisies in our workplaces that we are so starved of. So that is the mission.
Yeah. And what you make me think when you're saying that is we're actually just, our oxytocin is going crazy in our bodies, you know, that wonderful warmth, love. And that's what we're doing. And I think, again, when you were talking about, Tracy, when you said what can a single person start doing, just smiling at somebody creates a very different chemical effect in the body and the brain.
Yes,
you know, it's so
it sure
powerful.
does.
So powerful.
You know, I've often you said before that this field is perceived so often as the soft stuff, you know, and I have delivered this content over the years to so many different sectors, including mining, waste sectors, really tough, you know, kind of Aussie bloke sectors. And, you know, I'll say, look, you know, I get it. This sounds like the soft stuff, but this actually is the hard stuff. It's the tough stuff. You know, the avoidance is the easy stuff. And I said, this is not just about, I don't have to appeal here just to your values. I'm here. You don't know me. I don't know you. I don't know what your values are. I don't know what drives you and how you treat other people. But what I'm telling you is, if you adopt these skills and approaches and methods, you will get more results. You'll break through the barriers of the blockages, people who are blocking you, the walls who are up, you'll get them down. You'll get more results, more of what you're here to get, more of what you want. If you work and support the settings of the social brain of the other person, is what I'm saying, then, you know, you will be rewarded. Your endeavors and your gets, your gets will be on the other side of that process. So it's, you know, it's the work of courage. Maintaining the status quo of dysfunction and unsafe social environments is the work of cowardice. It's tough stuff. It's not soft stuff.
That's a beautiful answer to your question, Soraya, about why should leaders put this as the priority in their agendas. That really sums up. It isn't soft stuff, it's hard stuff. Yeah. And it's the stuff that turns the results that you're trying to achieve through your old methods.
It is your bottom line outcomes. It is. And yeah, if you really look at the bleed of workforce relations dollars spent by organizations every year as these problems calcify and are, pathway into HR and are formalized. And there are investigators being summoned, and there are psychologists being summoned, and there are mediators being summoned, the outcome of which is no change, more erosion and more harm.
Yeah.
And more settlements.
And more of and a greater spread of the contagion. The workforce dollars bleed, and the level of performance dysfunction, the level of sick leave, stress leave. Of course, we know that when it comes to psychosocial risks, that the physical health risks are conjoined to the psychological health risks. We know all of this. It is absolutely essential to the performance and the outcomes of your organization and every person in it. And of course, your responsible management of your fiscal resources as you start to redirect some of those resources into the development of a safe and flourishing culture and away from dysfunctional HR cycles.
From a fiscal perspective, again, Soraya, you mentioned a statistic a little while ago when we were chatting. I don't think it was in podcast, about the potential of our brains. Something like 40% is not being brought to work every day. So from a fiscal perspective,
it's worry that people are worried.
Why would you pay a salary to somebody and only use 60% of what they're bringing to the table?
Madness.
I see it so often, I'll have meetings with clients. Boss comes, brings 3 staff members. 3 staff members will remain silent throughout the entire meeting. There will be a cursory ask of do you have anything to add question to those 3 staff members. The response will be, no, I think that's got everything covered. They're not feeling safe. They have checked out. Their brain has them making consciously or non-consciously decisions for protection and not for participation.
Yeah, you mentioned about absenteeism and sickness increasing, but there's something being looked at the moment called presenteeism, which is where people are showing up, but they, as you phrased it, they've mentally checked out. They're not contributing. They're not invested.
Yeah.
And their salaries being paid, and whether they're shareholders with expectations, a board with expectations, a public relying on the public service agency that they work in, all of those needs of and that the people that rely on that organization, the purpose for which that organization exists, are not being met, all because of the breakdown of the social brain within the walls of the organization.
It's amazing. I mean, it's shocking, amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
So the big question is, what wakes leaders and decision makers up to choose to invest in their culture. I have found over the years there is such an allergy amongst leaders to the B words of bullying and behavior even. They're fearful of coming to their staff with that conversation for the sense of what it says about them as leaders, that it suggests that they're presiding over a culture where there's bullying and that's a slight on their own leadership, or they're scared to actually suggest that it could exist in the organization, that some of you might be or that I might be.
Yeah.
And so, and the conversation doesn't have to be about bullying. We're here to prevent it.
Yeah.
But I think that's
to foster a safe behavior culture, a psychologically safe culture where we are all free and supported to participate fully, knowing that we can expect acceptance and inclusion when we walk in every day. And that's a powerful statement for any leadership to make.
Yeah. And I think the key word there is preventing. you know, people always do it when the horse is bolted and it's too late. But it's
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
preventing, because, you know, that's when people, it just becomes part of their DNA and who they are and a way of being. And because otherwise, I was just thinking about, maybe there's leaders as well are very fearful about the rules and the laws, and they're going to get sued, and that, you know, this is going to happen. And so of course you're going to avoid it. You're like, whoa, I don't want to open that, you know, that box and find all that terrible stuff in there. I'm going to keep it shut because
Absolutely.
it's too late in a way.
Yeah. It is too late. That's right. And of course, leaders become even more fearful, as you're saying, Soraya, you know, when they have to go and address that team and it's in a state of dysfunction and disrepair. I don't think I see a HR leader run away from anything faster than a team in trouble. The fear in them of actually going to address that, speak into it, apply a solution to it. Sadly, they feel so threatened and at risk. And it's you know, HR leadership is a tough gig, and they're often the, you know, the perceived and experienced as the bad cops in the organization, and that breeds a culture in HR leadership of real avoidance of of managing the areas that are in trouble, of managing the problems, and of course feel under-resourced and equipped to do the work of prevention.
Yeah.
I've just got another phrase come to my head that I think is quite important to that, which is the behavior you're getting is the behavior you're accepting.
Yes.
Leanne, Tracy's a word person like you. She's brilliant with her words.
I love words. I've written so many of your lovely words down. I think I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell is Crystal going to decide what stays in this podcast?
Yeah. Maybe she'll have to do two, I'm afraid.
Do you know, I was just thinking there is definitely enough. I think we need to do part 1 and part 2 for this.
If you're okay with that, Leanne.
Yeah, let's give Crystal a challenge.
Yeah,
and in answer to your question, what's going to get leaders to shake up, hopefully listening to this podcast, we just need to get it out there. I think
may it take the world by storm, Tracy.
We're in 27 countries so far at the end of series 1.
Done.
Let's see if we can double that for series 2 and get those listeners up. So then you can invite those leaders on as a showcase to tell the how they did it story. Yeah, so we had a wonderful leader in series 1, not specifically looking at this topic, but certainly around creativity and innovation and some of the really different things that she does with her team to build that team. But that's a great idea.
Yeah. But my word of the day is preventative. That's what I think it is. It becomes so important. I think about the work that we're doing. It's about preventative. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take the manner before matter, because I think that just sums everything up.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
I've had a wonderful time, I have to say. I could carry on talking. Yeah.
It's not a hard subject for me to talk about, as you can see, and why should it be? It's the heartbeat of everything we do as congregations of human beings to come together on any purpose.
Yeah. You did that wonderful job of taking us in. Well, I certainly found myself going into self-talk quite a lot, because what you were saying was provoking so much memory charge, and just sort of, I had to remind myself, no, be present, Tracy. You've got to come back. You've got to be part of this conversation, because you just alerted my brain to lots of things that it resonated on so many levels, whether I was thinking about a particular client or a coaching situation or my own personal life and my own experience as a leader and being led. It just did. It was just magical, and my brain has worked. I'm very tired. I'm ready for another coffee. It was wonderful to be part of that conversation and just sit and listen to your expertise and your views and your thoughts, and also some of the progress you're making. So maybe that should be another word that we add in, is that yes, it's hard, yes, there's a resistance, but there is also progress, and this is language. This is now in everyone's language. We now just need to create organizational language.
Imagine me, imagine, going back to my days in the Hessian suit, feeling like that freak, having a conversation that no one was having. So today, there's a thing called psychological safety that leaders at the either are committed to, forming and building their commitment to, or at the very least want to be seen to be committed to, all of which is fertile for, food and soil for much growth. And, back in the years ago, from a organizational communication perspective, I loved strategy. I loved working on the big picture and pulling the elements of the organization's purpose, tying it under their vision, pulling it together, pulling the pieces and programs of work together, making sense and meaning of everything. I loved that work. But now today, I realize that the power to change organizations isn't in that big stuff. It's in the small stuff. It's in the moment. It's in the moments that are exchanged in 1/80th of a second from one brain to another. Whether what's being exchanged in that moment and over again is, a voice that's telling you that you don't belong, that's that's filled with intended sarcasm, or whether it's dismissing or ignoring you when you've just said good morning, or whether it's walking in to the staff room with a smile and how are you going, and whether it's taking time to chat to a person, here's your warmth, here's your connectedness, here's your humor, here's your care. It's the information we're sending to each other in those micro moments that shape the performance of the organization, these amassed networks of signals that are being transacted across an organization every single day that determine its outcomes much more than the strategies do.
And also, you just brought to mind then that we're talking about work, but people take this stuff home.
Oh, yes. Well said. Yes, they do.
You spread it out.
It's the same brain that walks out of the office and onto the tube and walks it into the house. And
says hi.
We've had so many comments about that this is what I'm experiencing. And then I take it home and I take it out on my kids. I'm so worn down, but equally I have a lot of people have come to me over the years and said, that I just Leanne my teenage daughter last night. I just class acted them.
Fantastic.
She just got a serve of manner before matter, so it can be used. The conversations can be used for good, but it's true, it's the same brain, the social brain. We're walking into all corners of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we either, deplete it or resource it accordingly.
Enjoyed this episode? Listen to more at brainycast.com.